I like you guys. Listen. Oh, you have a really good voice.
I can review your office.
We're on the record.
Okay, this guy's okay. Yeah. You know, I got my own unique thing. I was teaching this week.
I used to like spin your finger around and do things.
All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Montclair Planning Board. Notice of this meeting is published in the local paper and also posted in the lobby of this building. We are being streamed live on Channel 34 and also are being streamed on Montclair.peg.tv, and we are available on demand on YouTube. This meeting is a quasi-judicial meeting, meaning that we have powers and procedures resembling a court of law. We are obligated to objectively determine facts and draw conclusions from them in order to provide a basis for action. Any questions or comments must be limited to the issues that the board may legally hear and consider in reaching a decision, and decorum appropriate to a judicial hearing must be maintained at all times. First up is our roll call.
Chair Nguyen?
Here.
Vice Chair Brodock?
Here.
Mr. Schwartz?
Here.
Mr. Cook?
Here.
Councilor Schlager is excused. Ms. Willis? Here. Mr. Rooney?
Here.
Mr. Ian Wally?
Here, but not here for Lackawanna.
Okay. Ms. Lockman? Here. Mr. Barr?
Here.
Mr. Gilmer?
Here.
Okay.
Okay. We have minutes from March 11th.
I received comments or revisions to the minutes from Ms. Lockman and Mr. Brodock. Are there any other changes?
All right. Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay.
Okay. We have a resolution on the Lackawanna Plaza matter, and there are still some issues with the details of that resolution, so we are going to carry that to the next meeting. Counselor, I understand that you've talked to your client. We have a time limit that our next meeting may carry us past, and you're willing to consent to allow us to do
We
this.
consent to extend time.
Well, we have a meeting April 29th or May 6th. Well, I assume we want Mr. Galvin at that meeting. So I'm asking you, which date can you make?
I think the 6th is better.
So, I think the April 29th is the 5th Monday. So you might not have a meeting on the 5th Monday.
I think I should be okay on the 5th holiday.
Okay.
So
So
I was thinking the
it's,
same thing. I'm surprised it's there.
right, that's why we scheduled it the 5th Monday.
Okay.
What date are we talking about?
29th.
April 29th. That's our regular, we had switched our schedule because of the spring break with the schools. So the planning board meets on the 5th Monday,
I'm
which
good.
is the 29th.
I'm good. I'm
If
good.
not, it would be May
I'm
6th.
good with both those.
Is it possible we could do May 6th? I apologize, only because my client's out of town on the 29th.
Sure.
Yeah.
May 6th is fine.
As long as you
Okay.
consent to extend the time.
We consent. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Got to get done by then.
We have an application on Glenridge Avenue, LLC, which we are carrying to our May 6th meeting also.
Yes, they requested that we carry that because they have not submitted the revised plans yet, which first have to go to the HPC. We've also received a request from application 2582, 37 Orange Road, Montclair, to carry that to May 6th.
All right.
Okay.
And that takes us to application 2606, Adaline Master Property, LLC, 403, 405 Bloomfield. You said they're not? Or they are? Okay.
That's what I hear.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good evening.
Going through it with the architect who's here ready to give his presentation, it appears that just based upon the architect's information, we would not be able to address the specific issues that have been raised regarding the parking, access, and safety concerns regarding the parking in connection with the proposed parking deck, which is going right behind this building. And absent that, I would not be able to complete the presentation sequence because the architect would not be able to address the specific areas that have been asked to be addressed in that letter.
We discussed.
That would really be technical comments in paragraph 2.
I'm sorry, we're just talking about the letter.
So the intention.
You need to
Yeah.
pull that microphone, and you're gonna press the button.
Just make sure the reader.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
The comment being referred to is number 2 from the technical comments in the April 8th letter. The intent of the comment was to have a discussion regarding the logistics of the operations of moving the cars out of a stack configuration to allow the other cars to come out, and further into the discussion of the commingling of the use and potential designation of any of the spaces. It was intended to be a further into the discussions that were had at the DRC. I could certainly speak towards some of that discussion that was had at the DRC and formalize it for the record for the benefit of the board understanding the logistics of stack parking and the concern regarding that variance.
I know when we talked about it at the development review committee, because the parking deck actually has an area behind those for cars to maneuver in and out. So it's not going to be blocked.
Exactly. No.
Okay.
And it was not that the intent of the comment was just to have the discussion for the benefit of the board to understand both the existing with the existing configuration with the parking lot behind it and the aisle, and then the furtherance of it once the garage went up, how the allowances were going to be there for access.
What was being requested about specific testimony about the configuration and the movement of vehicles, and I speaking with the architect, he was uncomfortable because I don't believe he had enough information with regard to the proposed parking deck and really the configuration and the spacing. And I just don't know if I would be able to have adequate testimony from the architect, and it may very well be that I'd have to have testimony brought in from an engineering standpoint, either with, whether it's traffic engineer or some other engineer who would testify specifically with regard to seeing what that proposed deck is, how the stacking is, and address that. I know we talked about it at the meeting. We thought that everything was fine, but when I talked to the architect here, he didn't feel that he would be able to adequately address it before the board this evening.
I think that's an honorable position on the part of the architect. Can't practice engineering, and this is pretty much an engineering question of That's what it's telling me.
That's, yes,
And
that's
the
what.
case is entirely about the
Now, the variances really don't go to the parking, but there's a parking configuration which is coming about as a result of the, because we have the same number of parking spaces now and proposed, and they're not being enlarged. It was a question of moving them and also the approval on the stacking of them for the use of this property.
I would suggest when we come back, soon.
Just create a graphic where we can see everything. We can't really, I think I follow what you're saying, but we don't have the plans of the new garage, so if there's a way to make it clear, I'd be really uncomfortable even listening to this without seeing what you're talking about in a drawing.
Well, the concern I had was if we were going to do the presentation, I would probably be asking the same thing you're asking. Either give me the bird's eye or give me something so that I can see exactly what you as the applicant are planning to do. And that was the concern I had once I got this report this evening. I think when we had the meetings, we discussed it and everything seemed fine, but I don't think it was down to the nitty-gritty specifics so that you'd be able to make those determinations. That's my opinion at this point.
So I assume you want to carry this, because I can get you a copy of the parking deck plans. We have that.
Yeah, we have a piece, but we would.
You want the whole thing?
Right.
Okay. And we can give that, I mean, I know the board saw it a long time ago, but we can give you reduced copies.
That'd be great.
Of the plans.
Yes,
okay?
please.
All
and
right.
if there's any, traffic movements of the cars, just kind of as a preview, how are you going to move the cars around? If you do like one of those nice turning diagrams, that might be helpful for our understanding as well.
That's a good suggestion. I think that's necessary for the board.
Are the parking spots intended for the new apartments that
No,
you're?
they're existing.
They're
There's one for each apartment that's there now, and there's one for what used to be the former Allen's Deli,
Yeah.
and the other one
Dentist,
is the dental
yeah.
office. Yeah,
Mhm.
those are the 4 spaces.
Yeah, the additional bedrooms don't trigger an additional
Okay.
parking need, so this is more of a site plan issue and design of the circulation.
And there's pictures on page 5 and page 6 of Ms. Alley's portrait.
Yeah. Sir, since you're coming back to the table, so to speak, just to point out, the HPC's report recommends this approval because of the distance from the street, which is 28.5 feet. And from a head-on view, they're correct. You will not see this most likely. But what we don't have is a perspective view from south and potentially north, from east and west, if need be, as to how this extension, the addition is going to be seen, whether it will be seen if you're driving up Bloomfield Avenue. We have no perspective view of that. And so since you are coming back, could you provide some kind of sight view from the street? Whether when you're down below, we actually are going to see this and what it would look like.
And I thought that the pictures that were included by Ms. Talley's initial report to the board did include the pictures with site views from both sides as well as head-on. Am I correct?
The
existing.
I think Mr. Schwartz is asking for a rendering looking sideways, kind of at a,
Once it's built,
I'll say a 45-degree angle of what the new,
As-built rendering.
Yeah.
yes.
Site views.
so that we can see what it would look, what the finished product
We
would
don't, doesn't necessarily have to be colored in. It could just, we need to see the block, the size, perspective. If you're east of this location and you're coming up Bloomfield Avenue on an angle, when do you see it? Where do you see it, and what do you see? Do you see the back side of it? Do you see the edge? You know, you see the face of the addition? That's what we don't. We don't have any context for whether indeed this is seen, and maybe it's not seen. That's what we don't know.
So, what date would you like to come back?
And just to clarify, didn't we at some point make that a requirement for applicants in the commercial area, that they were required to provide this kind of perspective? Isn't that on the checklist?
It is.
Okay.
What are the available dates?
Okay.
What's that?
Most of the time,
You don't get it after.
you
I can put you on. Our next available date would be April 29th or May 6th. April 29th would be, takes 2 weeks. Or May 6th.
Do you think we'd have would they be issuing a report, do you think, from the engineer?
Yes.
So we need that, what, 10 days before, Janice?
What is after the May 6th?
Well, we only need it, what?
After May 6th, what is the next one?
May 6th, after May 6th?
Yeah.
Would be, May 20th? You want to do May 20th?
Yeah.
So, sir, just for clarification, to come back to this, in other words, we have this view right here, right? Now, you can't really tell the depth of this if you're across the street, directly across the street. What are you seeing of this? Because you're certainly not seeing this, it would appear you're not seeing this whole thing because it's back 30 feet. This would be blocking it. So we need a perspective view from head-on, from across the street. And
There is a page that you can see that. Next, last page.
I looked, I didn't see.
Yes. My name is Daniel Angel Roma, R-O-M-A. I'm the licensed architect for Artec Studio LLC.
Okay, so we have it on the rear, right? We have the rear.
No,
What are we going to see from the front? From across the street, from east, and from west?
He has it as the elevation section from Bloomfield Avenue.
What page?
What you're seeing here is you have the street, profile of the street.
What page, sir?
And then you're across the street.
Which page? The last
Page PH 100.
Okay, I have that page, right. So from the rear, you can see this, right? That's fine. Okay? Here's the front view.
Yes.
Are you seeing anything
No.
from across the street, or is it blocked? Is it totally blocked from across the street?
Is totally blocked from across the street. You can see a line. You can see a person across the street, 6 feet high, and then you see the view, and he can probably see only the cornice on top of the addition. You see, I'm talking about the drawing, no any pictures, just the drawing that you have the cars.
Aha, aha, okay.
you have a line view where you can see.
Right. But what we were also asking for is
Yeah, I know,
down the
the
street
sides.
and up the street.
Yeah, I
Both
understand.
sides.
Okay, I got it. So you have the perspective from across.
From across the street.
And you
yes.
want
Got
both
it.
sides.
Okay. I see now what you're referring to. Okay. So we need it from the east and from the west.
Okay.
That's the, this would be, you're standing here. Right, so you're seeing basically, yeah, what he's seeing, he's gonna make you seeing a little bit.
Okay, yes, we have a detail, we put it on a louver panels around.
Okay.
All right, we'll do that, and we'll address the parking configuration to be able to address the concerns that the engineer had, and that will make it much more specific.
All right. So we'll see you on the 20th.
Council, agree with time with the board has had.
Yes.
Thank you.
Pardon me, not that I'm looking for more work, but this application, the conflict in parking exists regardless of the new building. And there are other buildings with stacked parking. So who is reviewing these conflicts? We have nothing to do with it, I'm not looking for more work, but these turn movements exist right now because there is stacked parking right now. And if they exist, and whether or not if they move the cars a little bit, they still exist.
The problem that I see is, this is not, the architect's not the appropriate.
I'm not gonna be here.
to deal with traffic.
No, I'm talking about our garage.
And if you're talking about other property owners,
I'm just talking about holistically.
right, if you're talking about the other property owners, that the parking spaces for the other property owners,
Yeah.
other than this
Yeah. There's
project.
all stacked parking back there that abuts on the same
And
freeway.
when we designed, when the parking deck was designed, there was space behind these properties for cars to get in and out. And for fire trucks, and for garbage trucks.
So by extension, other than the fact that they can't testify, there should be no problem. I'm just guessing if that's the situation.
When we reviewed it, that question spent a lot of time talking about circulation back there, making sure that those properties had access, and it was designed so that they would have access.
Was our reviewing engineer aware of all that work when you wrote the comment?
Yes, and the intent of the comment is not to question the access to the area. It's only to discuss in benefit. Yeah.
About how the garage works, and you see what they're doing. Could you not be more conclusive in your comments?
Well, but
It's for the
isn't
intent.
it incumbent upon the applicant to prove their case as to why they need a variance?
Well, I think that it's on this.
And that's the
two,
intention.
Which is a little bit unclear. It's number 2 in the letter.
I think it was also raised as I identified it as a variance in my memo, because we are making them move the parking, because they're putting equipment back there. No, it's a trash enclosure.
Trash
And we made them move the parking, so it's a technical variance.
But the blocking would be from the fact that people back out and you have to park the car there while you move the other car. That's what I presume.
Yes,
Because
and
there'll
it
be
exists
one car
today.
that's sort of stationary. So I don't know, as an engineer, have you seen the layout of the new garage so that you can overlay your comments on this gentleman's plan?
I haven't.
Oh.
I'm aware from discussions on this application.
About a plan that's in the future, but this plan conflicts with, you might want to look at that plan. Because then I think would make for a more accurate letter. Okay?
Understood. Yeah, the intention of the comment is to generate discussion for the board's benefit relative to the variance that's being requested as a design waiver, to discuss the aspects,
Sort of speculation.
of that.
All right, thanks.
Okay, we'll see you on the 20th, May 20th.
Thank you.
All right, that brings us to our next application, Bellaire House Condo Association, application 2615.
Good evening. I'm Jennifer Alexander from Griffin Alexander PC. I'm an attorney representing Bellaire House Condominium Association, Inc. And we are here tonight seeking preliminary and final site plan approval for a standalone accessory structure near but disconnected from the association's building to house the HVAC unit. This standalone structure has become necessary to house the HVAC at an elevated level to avoid further damage to flooding, which has on more than one occasion damaged the HVAC equipment for the building. As part of this application, we are not asking for any variances. This has become now, at this point in time, an emergency situation for the unit owners of the association, as it currently is having to expend considerable amount of money for temporary heating and cooling for the building. The association cannot simply just rebuild the equipment in the basement to simply have it flood again and damage again. So that's why we're here this evening. I'd like to then present our first witness, Mr. John Franti.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
State your full name for the record, spell your last name.
John Ferranti, Ferrante.
Okay, and you're an architect?
I'm a professional engineer.
Professional engineer? Has the board seen Mr. Ferranti previously?
I don't think so.
No.
Could you give us 3 boards you've appeared before recently?
Recently, East Orange, West Orange, Maplewood,
That's good. That's
Chatham.
great. He's an engineer, not an accountant. Do we accept his credentials, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, I think if our neighboring towns will accept you, we'll accept you too.
Thank you. And my license is current. Usually I get asked that question. Good evening, and tonight we're
Your
here
friends
to
ask you that.
Good evening. Tonight we're presenting the Bellaire House, which is, just for the record, 530 Valley Road, Block 1711, Lot 18. And the reason we're here is because on August 11, 2018, I think most in the township will remember the flash flooding caused extreme flooding within the area, and more importantly, within the Bellaire House. The Bellaire House, it's a 7-story structure with a basement, with parking in the basement, and all the boiler, HVAC, and the heating equipment is in the sub-basement. So the entire building and garage area became engulfed in water in very short order. All the cars were lost, and obviously all the heating and ventilation equipment. If the board likes, we brought some photographs of the flooding event. If you'd like to see them, I
think we'll take your word for it.
Actually, quite dramatic. I have extra copies here so that I can pass around, but the important thing
you
is...
you can pass them around, but I think, all of us being Montclair residents have had our own flood experience, and we exactly sympathize and empathize.
It's just interesting. The volume of water was pretty impressive.
So, continuing on, obviously, for introducing the application, the drawings that we had presented are Revision B, dated March 14, 2019. We did attend the February 7th DRC meeting. We have received comments to that order, and we incorporated the comments in the Revision B that was submitted to the board. We are in a neighborhood commercial zone. As indicated, we're proposing an accessory structure in the rear of the property. And more importantly, if I describe the property, we have obviously the 7-story Bellaire House. Our neighbor to the west is the railroad, which is an elevated railroad. To our south, we have the Acme rear loading docks and for the Acme market. And obviously, to the east and north, the Bellaire House shields the building. So the building itself is extremely shielded from view from neighbors. We have in effect, other than the Acme, we have really no neighbors that would be impacted by this building. The building itself is a nominal 32 by 28 feet single-story structure, masonry with siding, and we try to keep the structure as small as possible for a variety of reasons. Number one, we wanted to come in with no variances, so we've located the building 20 feet from the rear yard as required, 20.5 actually, and 6.5 on the side yard. So we have no variance. We meet the height requirements. The building itself is 19 foot 10 inches. And all the equipment will be housed in the building. All the utilities to the building will be coming from within the basement. So we are self-sufficient from that perspective. The utilities will be brought to the building underground via a utility trench. So they will not be visible, and again, we're minimizing the visual impact.
I'd like to ask you a question or two since you brought it up now. Let him testify? No? You want to finish? It's fine. No problem.
Well, actually, my introduction is very, add very few more remarks. One things we are doing, there's an area of asphalt in the rear that's currently there. We're removing that entire asphalt and replacing that with a considerable amount of landscaping to not only to enhance the view to the mechanical building, but also to add additional landscaping in the rear of the property. So in essence, we're reducing the total impervious by 626 feet. So we're not creating additional impervious area. So we're actually reducing impervious area. To that end, recognizing that the township is extremely in the forefront of green infrastructure and creating buildings that do not impact the environment, even though we could have argued that we don't need to manage stormwater because we're creating less impervious, we are providing a well to infiltrate the roof water from the structure that we're proposing. From that perspective, in fact, we received comments from the environmental committee, and I think they requested that we look into that. So we already had provided the infiltration, so the rainwater collected from the roofs will be infiltrated, and so from the environmental perspective, we feel our project does not create a nuisance. That's basically our application. If the board looks at the architectural drawings, and if I may, just to reference that to that sheet. I apologize, I forgot my easel, but in essence, this indicates the equipment on the first floor. In essence, we have a chiller with a compressor, the 4 heating units, and miscellaneous equipment on the first floor. We are providing a roll-up door in case to provide maintenance to the equipment, and the roll-up door is facing towards the railroad, so it's again not facing the residences as well as facing the railroad. So again, minimizing the visual impact of the building. We are providing 2 small lights. Primarily, the lights are there only for if ever we need to access the building at nighttime. We have a light operated via switch, so the lights are not proposed to be on continuously. Again, just to provide additional commentary, there are existing light poles on the property that will continue to be there. One light pole actually interferes with the building, so we are relocating it roughly 6 feet southeast to make room for the building. With that, I think that Jennifer, I think that. Concludes my introductory remarks, and I'll be glad to answer questions on the board. Sure.
No, if you want to go finish.
Did you find out if this area flood? I know it's your.
Yeah, actually, it's as part of the project, we were engaged by the Bellaire House to do a flood study to see what can be done to mitigate flooding for the building. So we did I would say, an extensive study of the area. You're familiar with the area. Obviously, a lot of the stormwater comes from the upper Montclair area. It comes down Lorraine Place, Bellevue, crosses over to the railroad, and then it's collected with surface ditches, and then routed underground via concrete pipes. So, from the beginning of our lot, and our property is extremely long and narrow, the stormwater is conveyed underground via 48-inch pipes that run literally via a right-of-way along our western property line next to the railroad. Then at the end of our property, all the stormwater, that also collects stormwater from River Road in front of the Acme. It all converges at that location, then it crosses over onto underneath the via culvert, underneath the railroad, onto the other side, and then from there it goes via a culvert onto into the park. So, but the area on the other side of us, on the Anderson Park side, that's a mapped FEMA flood area. So the entire area on the opposite side of our property floods, and it's known as a flood area.
I understand the background. I really appreciate the background. But you have this set at elevation 328. I just want you to think 328 is high enough.
Good question, and we.
That's all.
Yes, based on the direct experience from the residents, the flood event from August 11, flood water literally reached 2 inches below the lobby area. The lobby's at 327, 328.17. So we raised it at 328.5, and in addition, the equipment will be on pads. So we're adding an additional. So we think we have over a foot of buffer between what we consider the highest recorded flood elevation, which was on August 11.
And then the other quick question is, where are the condensers?
The condensers are going to be removed and demolished.
Well, don't you need condensers to be?
No, they'll be chilled water. So the condenser that are there, shown on the drawing, were there prior. On the roof, there's a cooling tower. Yes, that'll remain. Yes.
Yeah, so just to keep it with that.
So there are no condensers in this building? What, I want to deal with the potential sound issues.
Great question. There are currently condensers on the rear of the property, and those will be removed because they are no longer needed. In fact, one of the added advantage of adding this new equipment is that our mechanical engineers have been able to design and will be purchasing much more efficient equipment. So the whole chiller for the air conditioning is much smaller. The heating system, the heating units are smaller, more efficient. So overall, the Bellaire House is getting a much more efficient mechanical room. But to your question of sound, we are very sensitive to that. Not only we're sensitive because we have to satisfy the residents.
Of course.
We have to meet their needs, which probably will be more stringent than our regulatory requirements at the property line.
Let's talk about how close are you to the nearest house lot, the rear yard of any houses across the railroad?
We're literally to the nearest residential.
I'm not going to tell.
If I, by the time we cross over the railroad right away is roughly about 50 to 60 feet. Oh, I say over 120 feet to the nearest house.
To the nearest house. What about their rear yard?
Well, the rear yard, the rear yards are actually away from us because all the houses, the nearest houses, are fronting towards the railroad and fronting towards us.
Right, I know it's a strange angle there. Do you anticipate sound? It looks like there's a fence there. Is that fence providing?
The way we're handling sound, we're doing the following.
Okay.
We're purchasing probably the more efficient sound emanating equipment that we could find. We are also speccing sound-proof, sound attenuating concrete blocks. We are providing additional insulation between the concrete blocks and the exterior siding.
Good.
We will be enclosing the top ceiling with concrete, and again, the roofing of the structure will also be insulated. And obviously we're aware that regulatorily we have to meet the sound levels at the property line for nighttime and daytime. Once the way we're proposing, because it's very difficult to calculate that exact number, we'll measure that sound once the equipment is there. And we also are designing alternative methods to attenuate sound, such as sound blankets that will be placed on the equipment on the inside. So again, the residences are probably going to provide much more stringent input on sound, right? And Monica's here; she's the president of the association, and she'll get all the calls, not me.
This is more of a technical question for maybe Tony. Does the chiller get vented at the roof of that building?
Now, the way the chiller will be, it's going through to the side, towards the back, towards the railroad. It's not. We actually don't have any stacks located up that penetrate the roof or are located above the roof.
So let's say if the sound coming out is louder than you anticipate, heading towards the rear and going into the residential area behind the railroad, what would be your plan to mitigate that in the future if you determined that there was a sound issue?
Right. To mitigate that, the most efficient way to do it, to make sure that you meet the sound, is to provide additional sound attenuation inside the building via sound blankets, you can purchase different types of blanket, different widths, to really get you there. If we still can't attenuate, then what we propose is to provide additional sound attenuating fencing towards the area that we're not meeting the standards, primarily towards the railroad.
So it's your testimony today that you will provide appropriate sound attenuating blankets and other elements to mitigate any future problem to the satisfaction of both your residents in the building and residents nearby behind in the railroad?
Yes. To underscore, being able to testify that I will keep all the residents happy, I think that's a little difficult for me to do it, but what I can say, we're committing to have the sound levels at the property line, and our property line is literally 20 feet away and 6 feet away to meet the standards.
Sound regulations are that they can't exceed 50 dBA at the property line after 10 o'clock. Right?
That's correct.
You can meet that?
Yes.
Better meet that.
We have to. We will.
So you're committing to meeting the appropriate regulatory requirements and will take appropriate attenuating efforts to do so?
That's correct.
That's all you can do.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, the building will be kind of isolated in the back of the Bellaire House, and it has pretty vital equipment in there. What kind of security measures are you taking to protect the building from intrusion and vandals? Or
well, the building itself obviously would be locked. The residents, literally all the windows of the residents are literally right there, and they'll be able to see any. I'm not sure would we have cameras, and there's cameras, video cameras. And I just recall that one of the comments at the DRC from the fire official was to locate a knock box on the building, which we've done, and the knock box will communicate directly with to our fire panel to the fire department. Yes.
Oh, I had one quick question, two quick questions, I think. One on figure 5, when it shows the side view with the boiler exhaust louver. That seemed to be right at eye level, and when I think of boiler exhaust, I think of something that's relatively hot. Is that a concern?
On the west view of the building?
It looks like it's an east view.
Right here. On the east view.
You have an elevation that shows the east view, and this is the last page of the set.
Right.
And it looks like it's right at eye level, and I'm thinking, is that going to be hot air coming out of there? I know it's a fairly efficient boiler.
It's just to vent the building, provide makeup air to the building.
But it looks like makeup air is on the other side.
Well, we have two louvers. We have an intake louver on the facade that's facing south.
Yep.
There, and that what we have there, we have the 6 feet away. We have the wooden fence, and our neighbor is the Acme on that side.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously there's another one on the western side where the roll-up door is.
This shows the east side. It says boiler exhaust louver on the east elevation.
Yeah, can I ask you what revision drawing you have? Maybe revision B?
Yep.
14?
Let me look. I have, this is figure 5, revision B.
Okay. Yeah, I'm looking at the east elevation, which is this one. There's no penetration there.
So the three pipes that are there,
You got 3 intakes that are showing up south facing.
Right, those are intake pipes,
Yeah,
yes.
so the ones that are the exhaust ones are also linked to intake on the left. Both of them are linked.
Yeah, I think that may be an error, that the,
So the ones on the west are.
right. You don't have the same drawing there.
Clearly not.
No, I apologize. But mine, that was like the. Or is the prior? Okay.
Let's see, so.
I know they got revised plans, which you probably would have gotten in your package. Okay, so maybe.
But I think that intake is probably mislabeled, that
That's
primarily
south.
is to provide fresh air into the.
What's the intake from this one?
I apologize.
Yeah, I know. Like I said, I got this March 28th.
I'm good on that one. And then my one other question is, are you planting New Jersey native plants? Everybody knows I'm going to ask that.
Yes.
You are?
Well,
it's-
I'm not a landscaper. The landscaper selected
Like I
certain
said, I think
plants,
it's the
if
same
I
one,
may
it's the
refer
same
to our
revision
landscaping
date. I don't know
drawing.
why.
And I can't testify that. those
I can
are
bring up a
New
list.
Jersey plants, But we can commit to that, absolutely.
You have a perfect. That would be helpful.
Yeah, that's not New Jersey.
That would be very helpful.
Hold on. You don't have a photo for her, if she was here, she'd be here. Okay? So, do we have a planting list of what works?
Ms. Talley has a list of New Jersey native.
So that you will consult with Ms. Talley, make sure that the plantings that you're using are on hers.
Correct.
Make sure there's some bamboo there.
No.
Stop.
Thank you.
New Jersey.
Is that native to New Jersey?
And that the number of trees replanted is at least the number that were removed, correct?
Yes. We're removing one and we're adding 3.
Thank you.
Other questions? Any questions from the public, such as it is? Doesn't appear to be. Counselor?
Your Honor, I also have Monica Biondi, the board president, who would like to say a couple words as testimony.
All right.
Your Honor. Mr. Chairman.
Your Honor, Your Honor.
All right. Yes, I'm Monica Biondi. I'm the president of the Bellaire House Board.
Monica, can you raise your right hand?
Yes, I can.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony about to give this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Proceed.
Thank you. Okay, do you want me to spell my name?
No.
Okay. I'm just here to underline what the trauma was that the building sustained last August, and that this is a situation that we are trying to ameliorate as soon as possible in as least invasive way as possible for both all of our residents and for the neighborhood. We explored a number of options of putting our equipment back into our underground equipment room, but to leave about $1 million worth of essential equipment open to be flooded out a 4th time, this was the 3rd time, seemed like it really was not the way to go. So that's why we have proposed this building in the back of the property, and we hope to get approval for it. That's it.
Monica, what about you talked about a financial impact. Is this Hello? Okay, sorry.
Okay.
Monica, you indicated about there being a financial impact, so is timing critical here for
Timing
you,
is
for the
critical.
board? And
Timing is critical. At this point, it's probably too late to avoid having to have temporary air conditioning again for a 2nd season, But if we don't move in time, we wouldn't be able to get the structure ready to have the heating in place, permanent heating in place for the next heating season. So we are being told that if we're not breaking ground in early May, we're in trouble and would have to have a continuation of temporary heating for the following heating season. So there is a big financial impact to not moving.
Thank you.
Public? All right.
Thank you very much.
And that's it, Council?
That's all we have, yes.
Okay. Anybody else have anything to say about this application? All right. Based on what we've heard, this really is a no-brainer. I don't see any reason why we shouldn't approve this. Again, we would just want to make sure, as Martin points out, that appropriate measures are taken for to meet the sound ordinances, we really haven't discussed any other conditions other than that. The native planting, excuse me, thank you. Go ahead.
The applicant shall utilize security cameras to secure the accessory building. The applicant will supply a knock box for the accessory building. The applicant will take all steps necessary to ensure compliance with New Jersey sound regulations, and the applicant is to submit their landscape plan to the board's planner for review and approval.
All right.
But I would, given the need to expedite this, I wouldn't given the need to expedite this for the cooling and heating season, I wouldn't, perhaps we could bifurcate the landscape plan from the technical approval and allow them to proceed with implementation so they can get a quick building permit. And, any plantings would come later. I think it's important they get this in, and I think if you go to the town building department, as we discussed before, and convey the urgency of this, you might be able to expedite this. You got how many people in the building?
There are 154 units.
Right. So I think it's.
They can issue a temporary CO and I put prior to the issuance of the final certificate of occupancy.
Exactly. So that
That
should
works.
help you move this along. And I think I mentioned if you show up there at 8:30, you might be able to get the construction official to help move this a little quicker.
Yes, we conveyed that to the contractors who know them well.
Okay.
So that's the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
All right. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Keep you posted. And also, we'll be happy to share with the town the report that John and his group did on the flooding conditions, because I think for all of Montclair, you'd find it rather illuminating.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. That brings us to we need to discuss the annual report from the zoning board.
Well, my recommendation is the zoning board of adjustment is statutorily required every year to do an annual report. The report that they issued this year has quite a number of recommendations regarding zoning changes. So my suggestion is we ask the zoning subcommittee to take a look at that.
I think that falls neatly within the realm of that committee's purpose.
I agree.
Excellent.
So
It does sound like Dr. Bill.
Right.
consider it referred.
Okay.
All right. And do we have any other committee reports that we need to discuss?
We have the master plan committee, is going to be meeting. We actually have already set up a date. I don't know if I've confirmed that with you, Carol, but it's April 16th. It's Tuesday at 7 o'clock. Okay, so I gave them copies of the Streets Are for Everyone plan that was presented last year. So that's why you all have hard copies of that. We can discuss that at the meeting on Tuesday. Okay?
That's Carol, Carmen, myself, and
I always invite John.
Yes.
Right, but I won't be there, so that we don't have to have a public meeting.
And
right.
that's just the subcommittee members.
Excuse me?
That's just the
And
subcommittee
it's just
members.
subcommittee members, I've heard from some of you, you want to meet independently, can come up with your own written report to the planning board. What I've tried to tell, I'll let the steering committee who worked on that plan know when it's scheduled for a discussion at the planning board. Okay?
I'll tell you after. Bills?
Motion to pay bills.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Motion to go home.
Okay.
Second.
There are some things that we need to discuss, and we will be discussing them, trying to sort them out with the attorney offline, and it will come back at the 6th, the May 6th
May
meeting.
6th.
Okay, so then those things that we discussed.
Right, you gave me some of your comments, which were pretty straightforward. But some of the other
Right.
comments require us to go through, I think we need to go through the record to make sure we have the correct information.
So all that'll be sorted out, but we'll
keep
sort that
sending
out
updated
offline.
versions.
Right.
And if there are questions about any comments that people have specifically made to our attorney, then he'll reach out to you to talk to you about those or to get clarification.
But Carol, I paid particular attention to what your concerns were, and I tried to respond and explaining that I felt that sometimes they were met, but not sometimes we have a thought and we expect to see it a certain way, but it's still there, even though it's not the way we
No, I
expect
thought
to
you
see
did a
it.
good job on those, but there was a couple of more things that I
Then
thought.
just-
She called me today.
Then, all right,
So I'll let
so
you- I'll follow up with
we'll keep going,
Dennis.
that's why we're still going through the process, all right?
Yeah, but I'm still uncertain. So we're on a third draft, right?
Fourth,
Well, I haven't seen a fourth draft.
okay.
What draft did we get in our packet? What draft was that, James? The one that we got in our packet this week?
I think that was 3.
That was 3.
That was 3 that we got in the packet.
Okay.
That was-
But we would have been.
We
Ms.
both
Lockman-
commented on
Yeah,
it.
Ms. Lockman made changes, then I made changes, but there's a fourth draft
Well,
that
no,
got...
when you guys are making changes, then the changes become a new draft with changes. Right.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's getting confusing now as to where we are
I
on
promise it's
draft.
not.
I wasn't able.
Well, it is to us.
Okay,
It is
so
to
what I'm
me,
gonna
yeah.
do, I will send you I will start dating them. I'll date where we're at.
Perfect.
We're coming up to, we're going to get a fourth draft now, right?
We're gonna...
That's what I believe.
Yes, fourth.
You're gonna get another draft, whatever number that is.
With a date on it, so we'll know it's the draft
But
as
that's
of-
because every time it's been changed,
And monkeying with things that we've already
Right,
agreed
but
on.
people-
Yeah,
keep-
but the thing is, I feel like we need to know what changes that people suggested were accepted or not accepted. So that's where it becomes problematic. We need a red line version.
Can I say this to you?
Yeah.
I think that is a mistake, because I don't want our resolution kind of put through a microscope in court if we were to go to court. And to the extent that you need to understand why the resolution says what it says, I'll do whatever you're asking me to do. But
if you have a real need to understand that, Carmen, what I suggest is to have Carmel, I'm sorry. I know, I'm sorry. I'm tired. But I think you should have a conversation directly with the attorney. I mean, if from reading it, if you can't tell if it hasn't been changed, then maybe it hasn't been accepted. But if you need that kind of detail, then that's the kind of detail that you need to have a conversation about.
Right, but isn't the point, you're saying it's not been accepted by whom? Isn't it the general consensus of the planning board who needs to accept the change or not?
Well, once it comes, right, we're in a drafting phase now.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that it's accepted
Right.
ultimately. It's just that it was put into the draft, and if it still has a problem, and evidently some things still have had problems, that's why we're having these drafts, because things are not getting in, or that somebody wants to get in. So we really need to kind of buckle down and try and focus on getting an agreeable
And part of my job is to get it into a format that the majority agrees on.
Understood.
Okay.
But the point is, you spend hours looking at this thing, and then you don't know if any of your changes were accepted or not. That's why the red line versions are absolutely...
Just call Ashley and ask her a specific question, and she'll help you. She's a sweetheart. She really wants to make you happy. Nothing worse for her than she's not making you happy.
It's not a question of being happy. It's a question of the document being accurate. And that's where I've found that there have been issues. We went back and forth with what the numbers of parking spaces are. Initially, you had the wrong lots. I mean, it has not been, a sterling document, in my view. I'm looking at these for 3 drafts.
In my experience, and I have 25 years' experience, sometimes what people say on the record's wrong. So if we're following what's in the record, if I have to go back and look for every mistake, you might find that some of the mistakes spring from what people actually said at the time that was wrong, in the transcript itself. But that doesn't really matter. We just need to achieve an end product.
I think the parking spaces are especially problematic, just because.
Well,
you remember I still remember the one hearing where we had a report that said one number, the screen showed a different number, and the engineer testified to yet a third number. So it was. I understand that. Well, if you probably saw my comment that said we should just reference wherever the number's coming from, right, wrong, or
and
indifferent.
The other thing that needs to be, we need to bear in mind is, especially with a planning board resolution, that the site plan is the primary document. Like in a zoning board hearing, a lot of times the resolution is the primary document. But at the planning board, other than the conditions, the material better be right on the site plan.
Except what happens is they submit a site plan, then they start making changes to it. Then the changes they make go to our architectural consultant who reviews it.
Yeah.
And so at a certain point way down the line, there's agreement. We've had this multiple times. Something changes between what the board approved at the hearing and what the site plan that is being reviewed 3 months later shows, and sometimes they've made a modification, nobody's picked it up.
And,
we got.
And in the spirit of that, I've always been about making sure that what my boards get promised, that those promises get kept. So I have a really strong mindset to make sure that we do that.
I have a question for you. Why do you reference every meeting that we've had when there's changes that happen at the next meeting? Why don't you just do an end, an end summary?
You agree with Mr. Troutner? You agree with Mr. Troutner because he wanted to change my format. This is the format that I've used from time immemorial. It tends to work, and it's never been reversed.
Well, I guess I do agree with him. Why don't we just have the document that says the last things that were agreed to? For example, I have no idea what the size of the loading dock is going to be. One says it's going to be 78 feet. The next day it's 25 feet less than what? Then it's 100 feet. It's very hard to follow. So in my view, it would be better if you just had a summary of what we think how the site should look after going through 18 meetings or 16, whatever it was.
I did make a request from the findings area that, particularly with regard to particularly with regard to the parking and with regard to historic preservation, that we would have a section where they enumerated what the exact things were, and I think we did that. That was one of the area that starts at number 50. Here's the things that the number of parking spaces, and the question is that accurate? I thought it was fairly accurate. There was a section which enumerated what the historic preservation things were going to be exactly all put in one place. That was one of the things that I found confusing, we wanted to change the format for. So that was done at least for parking and for historic preservation. And the supermarket as well. So those were the 3 areas that I thought really needed to be clarified because they kept changing all the way through the meetings. And I think that was done in that section starting with findings.
We're trying, again, you can go back and add a sentence here or there and kind of tie those together. If you're spotting a particular thing, let us know and we'll try to fix it. At some point we need to pass a resolution.
Yeah, but I agree with Martin. It has to be an accurate resolution. And that can be the founding document that everything springs from, rather than, having to refer back.
General Patton had a phrase that said, "The enemy of the good is the great." So we're going to get the best document we can in collaboration. We may not get the very best product of all time, but we will get a defensible and a resolution that will stand the test of time and keep this applicant meeting its requirements.
Okay, well, I guess what I would request that everybody do is to take a look at what begins on page 20, findings of fact.
Which draft are you looking at?
Well, I'm looking at the draft that is our most recent, the one that was sent in the mail to us. That's
In the
draft
packet.
three.
That's not draft 3.
I mean, I think where Ms. Willis is going to go is, to her point, the findings of fact are the keys, and everybody take a look at whatever the next draft comes out, the findings of fact section.
The findings of fact section, and particularly there's a section on what was done, what we said finally for historic preservation, what we finally said regarding parking, and hopefully for the supermarket. And if it's not there, then that would be something everybody might want to look at and see that that section is accurate, because that tries to correct all the changes to what was actually decided. That's the section that I thought was important.
Correct, that reflects.
It was confusing to try to figure out what the last thing said. And to just say whatever was last said is just not good enough.
Right.
So,
That reflects the final site plan that you want to see, that
The
you
findings,
approved.
yes.
Right.
so everybody pay attention to that section.
Very good.
We're going to get there.
So just to finalize, so which draft, are you going to show us a new draft that has Keith and my comments on it that we call draft 3, I guess it was?
We're actually still trying to get information.
Okay.
One of the things that came up was, what was the...
It was a baseline for
And
traffic, I believe.
We had to go back to the expert to get the baseline.
But your next draft that you circulate will have all the comments that you've received
Yeah.
through that date.
Yes.
So the answer to your question is yes.
We'll put out
Okay.
another volume.
So-
And I'll date it, we'll date it.
We have a little more time now to work through this.
Which is good.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
Very
they were
complicated
prepared,
stuff.
they were prepared to go over it line by line, and I was willing to go over it line by line, but I think it would have been a really big mistake. It opened this up to a challenge just on how how the input is going.
You mean the applicant wanted to go over it line
No,
by
no,
line?
they were willing. They were willing. I told them we might have to, because I want to make
Okay.
sure that we're satisfied and we get a finished product. But we don't have that now. We have the luxury of.
We have some
till May
time.
6th. Let's get. I'll
Yeah.
try to get it done behind the scenes, rather than watching how we're making the sausage.
All right?
Can I ask a quick question? I read in the Montclair Local that the group that opposed are taking us to court. Is that true? The approval?
We were taken, this is public record. We were taken
public.
in court by someone by the name of Mr. Hain. There was an order to show cause. He's from New York, not New Jersey. And we made an appearance in court last Friday, and it looks like that matter is going to be withdrawn.
You might remember him. He was the gentleman who provided input in the comment section, rather lengthy input.
Yeah.
But let's not, we're going to not comment on that because we don't know what's going to happen next. We don't know. I have nothing till some action's taken to withdraw it. It's still active, and we don't know what's going to happen next. But normally, an action isn't taken until we have a final resolution. What we'd say in the business is it's not right. We haven't really made the final decision until we issue our resolution. There isn't anything to appeal.
All right, everybody?
Is there a time frame for having to have the resolution done?
It's 45 days, and Mr. Troutner waived because we're well beyond it already.
Mhm. So there's no time frame?
There's no punishment for not getting a resolution done within the 45 days. All they could do is go to court and get us to issue it like if we were screwing around. But where we're acting in good faith here and working so hard, I don't see any judge in the world being upset with us under the current circumstances.
So this is the most complicated application we've had, since I've been here, if not since I've seen it. So, thanks.
Yeah, certainly the only thing that we've had more hearings on was the master plan. But, so, all right.
Just one more question. So comments.
Just one more.
Yep. Are we sharing? Like I generally send my comments to the group, but I don't think everybody has done that. So is that what you want to do, or
No,
how?
I want you to keep sending them just directly to me.
Send them to
I
you.
don't want people commenting on your I don't want other people commenting on your because we don't want to violate the Open Public Records Act. So I send you the draft, don't respond to all with your comments. Send your comments directly to me, and I will interpret them. And
Oh, that's interesting.
That's
Well, I have
what we've
been, no, but I've been sending them to everybody.
Well, but nobody's.
But you never told me.
Luckily, nobody's responded to you. Oh, great.
I mean,
great.
I may
Good job.
have.
Let's go to jail now. Come on. It's an accident. Don't worry about it. You're fine.
One more?